Commissioners, Monday, July 16, 2018, to order, please. Go to the board and register your attendance. First, we're going to have the prayer by Commissioner Creasy, and then the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Scott.
Yeah, I want to start by saying this is a prayer by George Washington. As many of you know, he had a prayer for each day and many occasions. And it's also for July, which is the month that we had our Declaration of Independence. The George Washington's prayer to the nation. May we pray. Almighty God, we make our earnest prayer that thou will keep the United States in thy holy protection, that thou wilt incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to the government, and entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another and for their fellow citizens of the United States of America at large. And finally, that thou wilt most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to mean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without whose example in these things we can never hope to be a happy nation. Grant our supplication, we beseech thee through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Please salute your flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Creasy. Next, we have appearance of citizens. This is a time when any citizen can come and approach this board with anything that's not on the agenda. When no one coming forward, we'll go through with the approval and the correction of agendas. Consent agenda.
Motion approved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Regular agenda.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Fritz.
Mr. Chairman? In the budget report, at the very end of the budget report, I'd like to add that we add to it an amendment to add to it an amendment for the cleanup fund around the county, and also the funding source, which is increase the building permit code for the building permits to the agenda.
Okay. Have a motion second. Any other changes or additions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. I've been asked to remind each commissioner to speak into their microphone, speak up to some of the people at home, and I see back here at the back, I'm getting a shaking head, yes, to speak up because some of the people at home is having a hard time hearing us. So, with that said, next is purchasing report.
Good evening, everybody. All right, submitting for your approval under Section A, contracts approved by the law director, we have two. Would you like to approve them as a group or individually?
Move for approval as a group.
Second.
Have a motion second to approve as a group. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Section B, contracts pending law director approval. Submitting for your approval, we have two. Would you like to approve these as a group or individually?
Move for approval as a group.
Second.
Have a motion and second as a group. Any discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Meade.
I think these have to be approved subject to law director approval.
Correct.
Right, none of our contracts are executed without Jay's signature.
I just, that it wasn't stated in the motions.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Section C, other business, we have a request to surplus property. The list was included.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Meade.
Now, I think it's important that the public understand that when we put stuff out for disposal, it's looked at very carefully. We have a program to make sure the schools get a look at it, other people, other people in the county get a look at it. We don't dispose of stuff that's excess easily. It's actually looked at very carefully. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Section D, we had an additional item that we added to the surplus list, submitting for your approval to surplus.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Also under Section D is an additional contract between the City of Clinton and Board of Education, submitting for your approval.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And that's all purchasing has, unless there's any questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
County Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I only have one action item tonight, and that is a request under our existing public records policy. The front page says the policy shall be applied consistently throughout the various offices, and then it has A, B, C, D. I'm requesting under Section A to add policies are the same. County mayor and subordinate department requests will be addressed to acmayor@andersontn.org.
Let's get a motion in a second so we can have discussion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Commissioner Warfield.
Was this approved by the HR committee, or was it tabled?
I don't know that this went to the HR committee. Any department can actually do their own public records request or policy, and that's why the county policy notes A, B, C, or D. I communicated a long time ago with Tennessee Department of Open Records and also Jay on this matter, but I'm keeping everything the same, other than Leanne will be the coordinator, and then she will be responsible for maintaining any requests that she routes to the mayoral departments. If you look at Knox County, theirs is done exactly the same way, and that is Exhibit B in your packet. So all of the separate elected departments in Knox County actually have their own public records request coordinators. So whether it's the courts, the trustees, the sheriff's office, the county clerk, all of those, county commission actually has their own. So I'm sure HR will be more than happy to offload a portion of their work.
Mr. Chairman, I move to refer this back to the HR committee.
Have a motion and a second. Commissioner Meade, is this on?
Well, yeah, I was going to kind of support the motion just made, actually. My concern is that it addresses only a single way by email that a request can be submitted, is the way this reads. And I know that the Public Records Act, it makes it possible for people to come in to do it face-to-face, to do it on the phone, do it by letter. It's not limited to just email. Not everybody has email, and there's some people that want to come down and actually talk to somebody. And in most cases in this county, my experience has been, if you come in and ask for a record, somebody hands it to you minutes later in most cases. And so I'm just concerned that this narrows the scope too much. So that's why going to a further review might be worthwhile. Thank you.
If I may answer that.
Mayor.
That's actually why, if you look, it says the policies are the same, meaning the policies are the same. People can come in, they have the right, the ability to go directly to a department and make the request in person. The coordinator is only someone that is contacted in order to route you to the right office if you are a member of the public and you do not know where to go. It isn't actually something that commission approves with regard to the public records coordinator, it is only something that I have to enter into the minutes for you all. Nothing prohibits anyone, for instance, also part of the county's public records policy, you don't even have to submit in writing a request to come in and see via inspection. You can show up, you can ask to inspect something in the mayor's office, you can ask to inspect something in the public works or planning office. You don't have to put that in writing if you just want to inspect. All that, everything is the same in the policy.
Well, except this says requests will be addressed to, and it gives an email address.
Which is exactly the
That sounds
same.
like it substantially changes the policy.
Well, I would,
Actually, that's, the way I understand this, and please make it correct me, you just want to add your departments in that section that has the lines, right?
correct,
You follow the exact same policy.
yes.
So there's no deviation whatsoever, and what she is talking about is all spelled out in the policy. You can come in person, you can write, you can email, whatever. I don't think she's trying to change the policy, the procedures in the policy. She just wants to, there's a section there, it's on the first page, it has 4 or 5 lines in it, and you can add in, if somebody has several departments under them, they have to pick a PRRC, a Public Records Request Coordinator. And am I wrong? Is that what you're just trying to do?
Yes, that's the only, everything, that's why.
And it's only for your subordinate departments?
Yes,
Okay, I don't think she's trying to change the policy. at
No,
all.
but it says, quote, requests will be addressed to acbayer@andersoncounty.org. And so that makes it sound like that's the only acceptable way to submit a request. That's the way it reads to me. It says the policies are the same, and then it makes a policy statement that seems to be in conflict with the other standard that allows you to walk in or whatever.
You can do it either way. You can refer to the committee or approve it, and I'll amend the policy and just put a line in there that identifies the mayor's office in that same section. The mayor's subordinate offices, and I'll identify Leanne that way. I'll just type that in. And then the rest of the entire policy, are you reading from just a memo?
No, I'm reading from her letter.
well, the
That
language,
she wants this to be added, quote, and it requires that the applications be to email. I have no problem with the mayor being involved in all the record requests to all her departments. I think it's absolutely appropriate. I just want to make sure that this doesn't seem limiting, that people have to use email. That's all. I
I'm
just want
fine
that to
with,
be clear.
I'm fine with Jay amending the language, but I was just going off of the previous paragraph that says, this policy shall be applied consistently through the various offices,
Yep.
except the following offices. So, and that's why A, B, C, and D have been provided in the county's own policy. So all I'm asking is just a notation that I'm not offering separate policies, but the county mayor, and if Jay wants to do that as for the department of the county mayor and subordinate, their request will be addressed to. That's an instead of the other address that's listed. I'm fine with that.
No,
And I'm not taking charge of all of the requests. The law just says we have to have a coordinator, and the
Yeah,
coordinator just
Sure.
basically pushes those requests out to the appropriate department. But then there is a requirement that we maintain a list, and then that has to be provided to commission, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Jay? On an annual basis or every 2 years?
Sure.
You all have to receive a copy of that.
Commissioner McCamey?
Mr. Chairman, if the maker of the motion would withdraw that motion, I'd like to offer a substitute motion that we refer it to the law director to make the necessary changes as he's spelled out and approve it subject to his approval.
I've got a quick.
You're the maker of the motion.
Oh, yeah. I've got a quick question. If we're talking about subordinate departments, Mayor, and Jay, that's talking about the departments that you're in charge of, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what if I change the motion and if we spell that out in there, that it's the county mayor and X department, X department, X department, that actually is specific. right now, if I didn't know and I read subordinate departments, it still would make me believe that I still had to contact the mayor. But if it specifically says in there, I'm making this up, if it's building and grounds, or if it's highway department, if that's specifically said in there and that's stated, then people know exactly, if I'm talking about the highway department, I gotta go see Mayor Frank.
Gary Long's gonna kill you for saying that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with
Okay.
waiting if Jay wants to come back with the language.
Well, so,
You're gonna change your motion.
okay, I'll change the motion that we put in there what specific departments that people would go to the mayor to make those, open records requests. Is that
That
all
sounds
right?
perfect. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll make that, I'm sorry.
Using the provisions in the policy,
Commissioner
verbal,
Emory?
in person, all those different
Well,
things,
I'd
not
just like
just
to see
limited
it
to
go
email.
back to, I'd like to go, for it to go to HR. If Kim in HR doesn't know anything about it, and if she's not giving her input about it, then if it's gonna be taken away from her, I don't know if it's an authoritative thing or whatever, but I'm just saying, I think it might ought to go be HR, be deferred back to HR, and then let them talk about it, and then that language could be added.
Yeah, that can be,
And then, but just as long as it goes through that HR channel, it's gonna be taken away from HR.
You're the maker of the motion.
I'll keep my motion as is. And then they can, if they want to come back to us and they want to suggest whatever changes in it like that, that's perfectly fine.
And the motion is to defer.
Refer this back to the HR
Okay.
committee.
I'll just ask for clarification then from Jay, because this is not an HR issue. It is a public records issue that is from the state of Tennessee. And any department, as you can see from Knox County, any department can name their own public records coordinator. And that is why Jay, when he drafted the public records policy, he inserted language that allows for that, and that's why he left blanks there that say A, B, C, D. I could actually write my own policy that says nothing more than follow the state law. Knox County's is actually a little bit shorter than this, but I'm not doing that, and I'm respecting the policy that's written. I'm just asking for a different coordinator.
Jay, you have input?
I'm sorry, I'm a little preoccupied. I just found out I'm gonna be a grandfather.
Congratulations.
It's a pretty good day. She is, I think the mayor's right on everything she said. I mean, I'll be glad to, you can approve this contingent upon me listing the departments and listing Leanne's name as the PRRC. You can send it back to HR and I'll have it ready for I think it's the records committee, wasn't it, that we actually
Yes.
ran this through? That's where the majority of the debate was in the records committee. But either way, the bottom line is the mayor has the authority to designate a PRRC for those departments underneath her. So if you want to go that route, that's fine. It'll just prolong the inevitable for another month. But I believe, honestly, I believe she has that right under state power to do this. And I would have to go back and research it to see if this body could reject that. But the way I see it now, it might be just as simple to either let me amend this policy, put Leanne as the PRC, approve it contingent upon that, or let me make the amendments and send it back through the records committee, and we'll be back next month with the same thing. Either way, I don't think you've heard her and she's confirmed it to me. There's no changes whatsoever in the way we do business here, as far as the policy is concerned, other than Leanne would be the public records request coordinator for the departments that fall directly under the mayor. Any questions on that?
Commissioner McCamey, you need to finish I cut you off too soon. I apologize.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to encourage this body to defeat this referral motion and then take up with what the law director has said. You know, it's a department that she's asking for her specific department, and all the other departments didn't go through HR, so, and he said it's not an HR thing, so I would urge the commission to reject this motion.
Commissioner Mead? I'm sorry, Commissioner Emery, are you done?
Yes, sir.
You're still listed as first.
Yes, sir.
So-
Thank you.
Commissioner,
Well, I still have the same thing. This makes a fundamental change in the policy. It requires that requests will be addressed to a specific email. The fact that they go to the mayor doesn't bother me, or they go to someone specified the mayor doesn't bother me. I think that's all very appropriate. But requiring it to be only submitted by email is the way this reads.
Well,
Requests will be addressed to acmayor@andersontn.org.
And
And so either way will work for me, okay, is what I'm saying.
Well, not to belabor this any longer, but the policy right now doesn't go to a particular person. It goes to an address that is in the HR department, and it says to mail to the PRC in the HR department. It doesn't identify an actual individual. I haven't even created a web address that says AC Mayor. I just was taking my lead from Knox County, where they did, some of them say public records at knoxsheriff.org, and I think that's just so that when you're putting together your public records report to deliver to commission or to the public at large, you have a separate email address that it's easily identifiable. But everything else in the county policy still directs you if you want to mail it, if you want to walk in. I mean, nothing else is the same. So,
Until it gets to your section and it says it will be addressed to this specific email. That's all I'm saying.
Commissioner Warfield, as maker of the motion, you got the last word.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to withdraw my motion. I trust our law director. If he says that this is the way that we should go, this is what's going to happen, I withdraw my motion.
Motion withdrawn. New motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Move to send it to the law director, contingent on his approval.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve.
That's correct.
Withdrew it.
He withdrew.
I
He
He made the motion and I seconded.
There was a motion on the floor.
Yeah, he made the motion to defer. Do you want to change your motion?
No.
So, to approve it as is? Okay. That's the motion on the floor.
I'll be happy to work with the law director on that,
Okay.
so.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. That's all the action I have tonight.
Okay. Law Director, Commissioner Wandale, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, I just had a couple of things I wanted to catch up on if I could. 316 Sherwood Estates Circle, the burned out house. We've had some feedback. I know, Chuck, you probably want to jump in and give us, it's going to be on budget. Okay, I just want the folks that know at home that the county is working on it.
Yes.
And zoning's on top of it.
Yes, sir. They're on top of it, and Mr. Yeager tracked down, I think there's an additional party that had to be noticed, and the Sheriff's Department, I believe in Campbell County, is that correct, Jay, is serving that notice. So it is being addressed.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate your feedback.
Absolutely.
And Chuck's going to address it in budget as well. Just a couple other items. We talked about a street light, Mr. Chairman, at the entrance of Kids Palace off of Edgemore Road several months ago or so. Just want everybody to know, Mayor, I've talked to TDOT, talked to TVA. Sounds like somehow we'll get a street light at that entrance. How we'll pay for it, we don't know yet in terms of, I think the Squared Answers or the Optimist Club may take over the monthly bill if it's installed. Raccoon Valley intersection requested by TDOT. I don't know if you have any updates, Mayor, but I've asked TDOT to give us some updates at the intersection coming west on Raccoon Valley onto Clinton Highway. I know they got some recommended changes, and I'd like to get with the folks in the area, especially JB's Mark Produce Stand, and let them know what's planned. I haven't seen anything since.
I haven't seen anything either. I do know they're getting ready to enter into the planning and engineering phase for the expansion from, I guess it's I can't think what the, in front of the Centennial Apartments, is that what it is? All the way down Edgemore to that intersection. So they did reach out and ask about some safety concerns, and I'm supposed to get back with them. I was going to actually talk to the schools as well about the number of students that get picked up at, there's 2 major locations. I actually kind of briefly mentioned this to Dr. Parrott. And I did mention to the chairman if commission would be interested in me sending out some type of survey on how to best communicate with you all on this. Do you want me to wait and do something in a mayor's report? Would you like me to have some kind of portal where I start posting this stuff? Or how would it be, best, how would it best serve you all?
Portal would be great. I mean, I
Okay.
think that gives you more convenience to get the information and put it as you get it without having to wait for a meeting and such, and just keep us, all of us, posted on how that's going. And I
Okay,
think
okay.
that'd be great.
And I'll find out on Raccoon Valley.
Okay, and anything, we talked about this, and I'm not sure it was an action item, but the Claxton Sewer, we kind of left off on that back in 2011 or so. We, of course, went up to Bryceville, which was well needed. My question I've been getting a lot of, and I'm sure Chuck Fritz has as well, is what about the future updates in Claxton? The next phase was supposed to go from Faust Kearney on over to Clinton Highway. And how can we pick that back up again, and what would be that process? Should we go to solid waste and start it, or how, just you, or?
I think we would need to get direction from ACWA and the Anderson County Water Authority and CUB. I know there was one particular area with a lot of homeowners in that area, but they did not qualify. The CDBG has income levels that we have to meet, and that's why we have to do all those surveys to prove the income level need. But I think we need to know from CUB and ACWA what their master plans are and if they plan on expanding those services in that area. And, it might be something that they can even do with help from the state revolving loan fund or something where they often will forgive part of that and allow them to build and then grant part of those funds. So those are maybe some ideas. They do have a meeting tomorrow night
Right.
that I'm sure we're all going to be at.
I'll be there.
We can bring that up there.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Fritz.
I will go on a little bit further in state. I did get a call from some homeowners out there, especially off around Crest Lane, that TDOT is doing some extensive surveying for the expansion of Edgemore Road, because they were sort of concerned. First of all, they thought it might be the county out there surveying. Now, I don't know, it wasn't the county. I had no intention of doing any expansion, that it was TDOT. So they are moving forward with the extensive surveying of the area out there for the expansion of Edgemore Road. So, as you said, they are
Okay.
working on that lines there. And so you see surveys, things out there, that's working there.
And I
So,
think they're planning a 4-lane with a center lane, so the whole way.
'cause,
And then, of course, we have our resolution that we put in, hoping that they would do bike lane as well to maybe eventually connect to the park, the landfill that will be a park one day. So-
One homeowner was concerned because she was getting ready to put up a fence, and she didn't know how long the fence would be able to stay there before TDOT come and took that part of the land away from her. So she was just concerned how soon that might be happening. So I sort of gave her an idea of how the things were going and what stage we were at. So that made her feel a bit better. But and then as for the 316, I have been delivering personally. I've been knocking on every door in that area right there and hand delivering them a written update to everything that's been going on with that house, and then everything that our law director's been giving me, I've been taking it to them and hand delivering it to them. So hopefully they've been kept up to date with it. So and I said hopefully you'll see some action soon.
I hope so.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. It's actually, I just wanted to get Andy's attention without cutting anyone off. Andy, they're saying Channel 95 on Comcast, they're not getting any sound.
Would you like to take a brief second to explain?
Excuse me?
Would you like to take a brief second to explain? The storms 2 weeks ago, roughly, we had a part at the pump
getting messages from people saying we can't hear a thing.
Yeah, we're, kind of at the mercy of how fast we get the
Okay.
party in, so.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Same thing.
Commissioner Warfield.
Mayor Frank, just wanted to make sure, I know that they, at Harrisonville Elementary, I think they were marking, utilities up there. So we're going forward with putting in, I know not all of the sidewalks, but we're not going to delay this, right?
No, sir.
Okay, because I had heard, somebody had said, well, we're looking at doing a grant to cut that cost in half, but that would delay it. So, but I know they went up and did some marking, as far as the utilities, and that's what Beth was, she thought that the sidewalks were going
Oh,
forward.
no.
She was up in the air, so, okay, thank you,
Yes,
ma'am.
we still don't have approval from TDOT for, to put it out to bid, but they are surveying, and that was only, I think, to mark where the manholes were
Yes,
and
ma'am.
things like that, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's still
Okay.
going forward.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anything else to the mayor? Jay, do you have anything?
No, sir, I have no action items unless anyone has any questions.
Commissioner Emmerich.
Yes, sir. Jay, what's the status on the home, the road up in Arcadian Village where the home was built, no road? Not heard anything else on that, and a couple of people had called about it.
No, I haven't. What we did find out here, I guess it's been a few months ago, is there's a new developer that's moving in there, and I mentioned this to the mayor, we might try to get that individual to bond any new roads up there, or any existing roads that he's gonna be building on, and, I think that's an opportunity there. Remember that one road as you come in the facility, or the subdivision, has never been a county road.
Right, service
And,
road.
Right,
Yes, sir.
that's a private road there, it needs to be a county road, and I think all the residents realize that, so that's an option. But, I went up there maybe 6 weeks ago, and the homeowner is just got a little drive from her driveway, which is only about 25 feet, back over to the public road. I've not heard from them at all. Mayor, do you have anything to add on that? I've not heard anything other than a brief email exchange with the mayor on it.
Okay, but Mr. Long still can't do anything to that, can he?
No, he can only work on county roads, and that section is not a county road. Now, I thought at one point, there's a couple lots there that we were gonna be able to make it a county road, but from what we understand, that's gonna be a private driveway back to a small horse farm back there.
Well, how'd they get the permit to begin with?
I think it was more confusion than anything. The road was never taken into the county road system, but it was platted. And I think Mr. Crowley or his staff, and I'm not sure exactly who was the one that signed off on this particular permit, didn't check the listing of county roads. They just looked at a plat. And Mr. Crowley had actually made a notation, and he showed it to us in a meeting, that needed a hammerhead or a turnaround on that particular section, but that road was never brought up to county road standards, never built, and except that small section up to that lady's home. And it was never taken into the county road system. And as you all know, the way that process works is in Anderson County, it goes through the highway department. Once Gary certifies that it's built to his standards, then it comes to the highway department, and then it comes up to the county commission, and county commission is the only entity that can approve a county road. At that point, then the highway department's on the hook for the maintenance and going forward, but that's not happened right now. But the lady does have access to a county road. She's just not on a county road, and honestly, I don't think there's no one in county government that wants to see us at this point say this home is illegal or anything like that. I mean, it's fully built, they live in it, and it's just something that at some point, we need to either extend that road and build it to county road standards, get bids on it first, and I want to say, is there one more lot back there, Mayor? And that developer that I'm speaking about owns that lot, so I would think before he ever develops that, we would ask him to, look, you need to get that road extended, make this a county road, bring it up to our standards, let Gary approve it, Highway Committee approve it, and then bring it up to County Commission for approval. But I think that's a feasible option. We're holding, in a sense, he can't get a building permit on that lot, and he will have to bring that road up to our standards at some point when he tries to sell that lot. That's if you're facing our house, it's adjacent to the right side of our home.
How can we deny him permit if we permitted the other one?
We don't have an application there and that for a building permit at all
Okay.
on that lot. In fact, I believe last I knew, it was still in the developer's hands. He's never tried to sell it.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
If we do, I'm sure David or somebody will catch it down there, but if we do get an application for a building permit on that, I think everybody will realize that's not a county road, and we need to get that bonded and that road extended and take it into our system.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.
Anything else?
Thank you,
Commissioner
Chairman.
Scott.
Thank you. Jay, just for the purpose of discussion in Fire Commission,
Yes.
with regards to Tupper Town Community Center, will Rescue be able to utilize that property at all for Windrock purposes?
You've got a lease before you tonight for another entity that I've sent you an email on this. We don't want to
I
discuss some
understand that.
terms.
It was
Now-
just a simple,
Now, from
Yes
what I
or no?
understand with TK and what the mayor said at operations, they don't need it. Mayor, is that correct? The rescue squad, they're not interested in it? They were offered it first.
correct. I mean, I don't, I'm asking in the sense of Windrock events, when they have these massive or large events, that's where they were wanting to park, or store some equipment for the purpose of those events.
That's something we could work out.
Okay.
I don't think that would be off the table, but as far as taking that over.
Lease-wise, no, correct.
He was given that opportunity.
Correct.
I think that was our first offer, was to the rescue squad.
Yes, but they're not going to utilize that full-time. That's why I was asking even just
Right.
for the events itself.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McCamey.
Yeah, Terry Allen, the rescue squad chief, I spoke with him at operations when we talked about this in operations, and he said that he would like to have it, but his board would not approve it, and therefore that they wouldn't be able to utilize it.
Okay. Any other questions of the law director?
Thank you.
Thank you. Elected officials, Myron Nowansky, Myron out in the hall. Are you-
Hello, I'm Janice Williford. I'm here for Myron. I think you all have in your pamphlets, do I need to read this or
No.
do I
No,
just need to vote?
If you just want to give a general, brief for the public to hear.
Okay, this is to release the 2016 property taxes that were assessed in error. This is any of the corrections that is gave to us from the property assessors. And then the second page is, this is for all the 2016s that were delinquent taxes that were sent up to clerk and master.
Make a motion to approve the delinquent taxes.
Second.
Have a motion, second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Creasy?
Yeah, I noticed there was two properties, one by 3M, which was $200 and some thousand. Was that a $200,000 error in assessment? And then there was one with Simplex or Simline, I believe it was, for $120,000. And that to me seemed like very large errors, and I was just wondering if we had an explanation if those were errors, or what the status of those two figures.
I believe those are the IBD agreements. Do you know what page that's on? I might be able to help you with that.
Page 11, it looks like on the 3M, I don't mean to interrupt, Jerry.
No, that's fine. I don't have it in front of me.
It looks
Okay.
like on page 11 of the report, it shows 3M Company, and it shows in lieu of tax, Industrial Development Board agreement. So
Yeah, they were deleted off of our roll and added to the IDB. We have an IDB agreement on those.
So that means they're not paying any tax, or?
It's the in lieu of payments. Yeah,
Okay.
we still get it. It's just not on our tax roll.
Okay. Yeah, I asked for that list, and Mr. Iwanski furnished me a list
Yes.
of those properties.
And
that-
3M should be on that list, the
Okay.
in lieu of list.
I didn't compare the two lists,
Mm-hmm.
and I probably should have. But, yeah, those two figures just jumped out of the page at you.
Yeah.
They're so large, and so, but I thought I'd ask that question so that we could have an opportunity to learn a little more about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wandell?
Oh, that was it.
Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Chairman.
Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Chairman, I make a motion we release the 2016 property taxes in some area.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Highway Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On motion by Commissioner Isabel and second by Commissioner Warfield to post at Lyles Lane a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, and I so move.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Motion by Commissioner Warfield and second by Commissioner Isabel to have a bridge at Park Road named after SPC Austin Reynolds, who lost his life in the Army, I believe he was. And I so move.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Reports from committees. Budget Committee report.
Good evening. I passed out the cash and fund balance reports and the graphs just this evening. As you know, June closed our fiscal year, and for the next 45 days, we're going to be closing out last fiscal year. So technically, even though June has ended, it's still open with respect to financial transactions. And this information is current as of today. So first, starting with the cash and fund balance report. As you will see, the financial indicators continue to be favorable and are comparable to previous months. As I just mentioned, these are unaudited numbers and pending year-end accruals and auditor adjusting entries across all funds. And then as we close this fiscal year, some of these fund balances may move closer towards their cash balance, but these fund balances are projections based on last year's budget and appropriations. So starting with the fund balance reserves as of June 30th, unassigned fund balance is $3.9 million. Restricted fund balance is $1.2 million. Committed fund balance is $2.2 million. Assigned fund balance is $400,000. Non-spendable fund balance is a little over $1 million, bringing our total fund balance reserves to $8.8 million. And again, the unassigned fund balance continues to be right below the $4 million threshold. Cash balances, as you'll see, as of June 30th, it is favorable, $10.2 million. Last year, it was 7.3, and the year before that, it was $9 million. That's all I have on the cash and fund balance report, unless there are questions.
Commissioner Wandale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Natalie, thank you for this information. Well done. What do you think attributes to the cash balance 2018 versus 2017? I mean, we're almost $3 million difference.
Right.
What do you think that is?
I think it's a combination of two factors. If you'll recall, last year we had 2.8 pennies that moved out of the general fund and went into Fund 177 for capital projects for the schools, educational capital projects for the Chromebooks. This year, that 2.8 cents came back to the general fund.
So that's roughly, I want to say, it's approaching $500,000 just right there. And then also, based on right now, I don't think all of the appropriations have been spent down. Meaning we could have appropriated money last fiscal year, that bill still may be coming that will draw that cash down for last year's appropriation, but it may not have been spent. The other upside is, as we get to the next graft, or graph, not graft, we may have a surplus this year rather than a deficit as we budgeted.
And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I guess my question is, as we come to the end of the year, and you've explained it, but I guess for me, how do those funds, do they roll over into the new year? Or do we start from zero, or, I'm just curious.
Okay, so if I'm understanding your question, if we have an appropriation to spend money last fiscal year,
Correct.
if that money is not spent in the next 40, I mean, if I don't get an invoice saying that it was spent as of June 30th,
Right?
it will flow to the unassigned fund balance, provided it doesn't have a restriction on it. So for example, there's a lot of discussion about the sheriff's rollover money. And typically year over year, on average, around $500,000 rolls over, meaning it was appropriated to be spent but wasn't spent, so it rolls over into the unassigned fund balance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And can I add something to that? So that someone may not think about that 500,000 that's rolled over. We, in the sheriff's department, as I understood it at budget meeting, we've been having trouble hiring jailers. And so we had appropriated money to hire jailers, but couldn't hire them. So we had extra money.
Correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain that so that the people in the audience and at home would understand why we had a 500,000 surplus.
Commissioner Smallridge.
Right, I was just wondering, what's the basic difference between a committed fund balance and an assigned fund balance?
So an assigned fund balance is just something earmarked for a particular purpose. A committed fund balance is something, an action that this body has taken, saying, for example, we've got a couple of budget amendments crossing fiscal years where commission approved, I think, the $30,000 for the animal facility to go out and get designs drawn. That's one budget amendment that's crossing fiscal years. So with commission approving that appropriation, if that wasn't going to be reappropriated, it would be committed. Okay?
Okay.
Good questions. Okay. Moving on to the graphs. And again, this is June financial information, and I've indicated it's unaudited and open. So with that, what I mean is we can't take these numbers to the bank yet. And you will see the general fund cash trends, we just spoke to that. Let me go to the side to the general fund actuals year to date as of June, and you can see the revenue trends in the blue and the expense trends in the orange. And it's stating the obvious, but revenue is flat and expenses are increasing. So as I've said before, over the longer term, this is not sustainable. Although the good news in that, in this fiscal year, as of today, we are showing a surplus. And then finally, the general fund unassigned fund balance trends. If we were to close the books today, then our unassigned fund balance is going up. So again, we'll know more in the next 45 days and then after the audit to see what auditor adjusting entries are in closing this fiscal year.
Commissioner Wandale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Natalie, I just wanted to point out again for folks at home that this information's online at andersoncounty.com under the financial department. You can click on that, and these forms that you're sharing with us tonight, plus the budget for the county, the upcoming budget, the past budget, all that information is online and can be made accessible, and the folks can review it, correct?
These aren't online yet, but
Okay.
it will be.
Okay.
I will have my staff put that online, so in closing the June year, we can all be on the same page.
Thank you, Natalie. Good questions, but better answers. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the budget amendments. Submitting for your approval, Group 4 appropriations, non-school. Submitting for your approval individually or as a group.
Motion second to approve as a group. Let's go to the board and vote. Motion passes.
Moving to Group 6, appropriations, general fund, unassigned fund balance. And again, this will require 2/3, is it 2/3 vote?
Motion second as a group. Let's go to the board and vote. Motion passes.
So before we go to Group 7, Group 7 focuses on spending down the capital outlay money. And as we've been talking and approving the budget, for this 1 year, there are pennies coming in to the capital projects fund for only 1 year. And that is going to generate approximately $1.4 million. The Budget Committee is presenting budget amendments that will spend all of that money down and some of the remaining capital outlay money from the year prior. So I just want to point that out, that if all of these budget amendments are approved, and then if some other type of an emergency or critical need comes up, then we're going to be met with how are we going to finance it. So with that, on pages 6.
Hold on a second, Natalie.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wandale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Natalie, as you're getting ready to speak on Group 7, items 6 through 8.
Yeah.
$674,456. That number, is it considered a committed fund, restricted fund, or unassigned fund balance?
So the pennies coming into the capital projects fund can only be spent on capital projects for the county. They can't even be spent on capital projects for the schools. That would have to flow into 177. This new revenue stream coming in for 1 year, none of those funds have been budgeted or appropriated for. So if we were to go through this entire fiscal year and not spend any of these pennies, it would be considered unassigned fund balance, but it would be restricted to the capital projects fund.
So is that 674 included in that 3.9?
The 674,000 is the total of all the decisions that the Budget Committee made to spend down that property tax revenue coming into Fund 171.
So it would be in that 3.9. I'm just trying to, I guess my question is, our numbers will change once we make this decision, correct?
So are you referring to the cash and fund
Yes, I'm
balance?
sorry.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so if you'll go down to Capital Projects Fund 171, right, because these numbers are as of June, this revenue's not in there yet. And technically, the revenue, it's budgeted to be in there, but we won't have cash in there until we collect the property tax levy.
Okay.
So that's why there were a series of motions made in Section A that $450,000 for sheriff's vehicles, motor pool got $19,000. There were a couple of vehicles, one for animal control, one for Parks and Rec. I believe that was, and then there was the Jolly Building roof that was also going to use the capital outlay. Those are just going off memory. They're in your budget materials.
So I guess what I'm hearing is the 674,000 plus the 800,000, which is the next item.
Right.
We're looking at $1.4 million that was excess funds.
No, that's going to be revenue coming into this fund this year.
That will become in this, I follow you. Okay, so no, it doesn't have anything to do with these cash balances.
Not yet.
Okay, okay.
As
It
we
will
go-
as we go.
That's right. And that's why there's also a motion in there from the Budget Committee for me to work with the different department heads and offices on how we're going to cash flow these expenditures, because for the next 5 months, we've got zero cash. So if we're gonna, like, let's say we're gonna rush out and buy all of the sheriff's vehicles, then the general fund's gonna have to loan that fund the money for a period of time until that tax levy is collected and comes in.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. Natalie, you've got $25,456 to purchase a vehicle for the animal control.
Right?
That was due to a vehicle that was wrecked.
That's right.
Did we not have insurance?
We do have insurance. We've already collected the insurance recovery money. It was around $9,000 in, I believe, totaling that vehicle. Motor Pool currently has that vehicle, trying to make it a service vehicle to see if we can salvage it and use it somewhere else. And it's also got other issues in that this new vehicle doesn't have the compartments to put the animals on. And Motor Pool is going to try to use the existing compartment and kind of make it fit the new vehicle, but they've got different chassis and that may not work.
Okay.
So that's a real
No, that's
complicated
very
transaction in
good.
and of itself.
That's very good. Out of curiosity, how many miles did that vehicle, or don't you know, but, okay.
250,000 is
Okay.
what Mayor.
Brilliant.
Frank said.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Fritz. Commissioner Creasy.
I want to compliment the finance director on how well she explains our predicament with the money. She explains it where all of us can understand it, and the people at home. And she pointed out that we have a leak at the roof at the Jolly Building, and the budget committee made that a top priority. That be one of the first things that we spend that money on when we get it from their tax revenue.
Well, and if you'll recall, the Jolly Building roof was in last year's appropriation from the capital outlay note. $100,000, I believe, is about what we have left remaining from the capital outlay note that will go, so that priority that we had last year to fund can be funded this year.
Right. Thank you, Natalie.
Any other questions before we vote? Let's go to the board and vote, please.
Individually or as a group?
Mr. Chairman, are we voting on 6 through 8? Are
Yeah,
we
group 7.
Just
Group
group
seven.
7, not group 8?
Not yet.
800,000, okay.
Yep. Have motion approval as a group.
Second.
Motion passes.
Okay, and then also, new in the commission's package, the Budget Committee discussed also having $800,000 earmarked of this capital money for EMS, but we didn't make a motion to really give that $800,000 to EMS for the combination of ambulances, cardiac monitors, and stretchers. Nathan presented a plan. He's still working through his plan. We're still in the process of sending it out to bid. Wanted to see if commission was willing to, that was included in the budget proposal, to make the motion to have EMS be able to access that $800,000.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Have a motion, second, Commissioner Emmett.
Thank you, Chairman. So I noticed it says items not discussed during budget committee, so it's not been to any committee?
No, it was presented at Budget Committee. Budget Committee didn't make a motion. And Nathan's working on different scenarios to see how much equipment he can get based on ALS, BLS, stretchers, monitors.
Shouldn't we find that out before we start voting on how much money? It's just money, right?
Well, I mean, it's going to go through the process of being, meeting the purchasing standards. So if commission doesn't want that $800,000 that was discussed in the budget proposal to be dedicated to EMS, then we don't have to approve this. But that was what was in the budget.
Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Wandale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did discuss some of the plans that Nathan has for EMS at the operations. I mistakenly left that off the minutes. It's not included in the minutes other than discussion. But we did make a comment, and we wanted that plan posted on the website for all the citizens to see, because Nathan had it broken down by, I think, month, if I'm not mistaken, Mayor. And he had made comment they had already bought some of the stretchers or something. I'm not certain, but Yeah, cardiac monitors and such, but I guess something that comes to my mind, it seems like this body, before passed a motion that before we spend any more money on EMS, that we were gonna go month to month. In other words, EMS was gonna come to this body, and we were gonna look at the revenue versus the cost, and we would make decisions based on that. Now, I don't have the motion in front of me, and we'd have to research that, but I recall that. Does any of the other commissioners recall that motion once upon a time where we asked, because we really, I mean, we're not doubting that EMS needs the money, but we are doubting that we need a good plan. You know, we need a plan before we can keep spending. I look at it like my kids coming in saying, Dad, I need $20 to go to the movie again. I keep giving $20 and sometimes they might not go to the movie. I need to be assured they're going to the movie, and I need to be assured when we spend taxpayers' dollars where it's going, how it's going, and what it's being used for. Because I think we have, as a body, in other situations, senior center, for example, spend the money and then we go, uh-oh, we didn't do the right thing. So I want to be sure that we're doing the right thing. So go ahead.
And I let Nathan know that even though the topic was discussed at Budget Committee, no motion was made, and really, did he want me to bring it to commission for, he may be at the fair, he's obviously not here tonight, I don't know what his conflict was. So I'm fine sending it back to Budget Committee, but I just wanted to, if this body wanted to have, hi.
That's a quick trip to the fair.
Well, hold on.
I don't know if there was a question.
Well, Nathan, I'll address real quickly to Commissioner Wandell's point. There's not any we already discussed with Natalie, there is no cash, and we are fine because any kind of plan to purchase the necessary equipment, we're going to have to work out when that purchase would take place. Nathan brought, the priority, and I'm gonna let him talk about this, the priority is the equipment, and we are going off of that audit, and what they said were the critical, you need to address this right now. So that's why at Operations Committee, he distributed his little worksheet, if you will, that was 4 ambulances, and then he had a different spreadsheet there that showed, okay, here's what we could do with that. We could get 4 ambulances, one of those being a smaller vehicle for convalescent. We can get this many cardiac monitors and this many stretchers. Those are the critical items that were identified in the audit. And so he is he's responding to that based on what those critical items were. So, and I think since that time, since that last meeting, I think he's played around, and because he's already purchased some cardiac monitors, you're looking at maybe just finishing that purchase and
Right. So part of it was we were told that we were looking at $800,000 to spend on the capital outlay needs. So we've been taking that amount of money and seeing what we can buy with it, as opposed to saying we're going to buy 4 ambulances and this many stretchers and this many cardiac monitors and this is what it's going to cost. We've been using kind of a reverse method. This is how much money we have, and with that amount of money, this is what we can get. So we could look at it 2 different ways if we want to. We could try the other where we could say, hey, this is what it would cost to buy this many ambulances, because you might be able to get a better price if you have multiple ambulances as opposed to just buying one. So that's what we're really looking at is with $800,000, what can we buy? We already bought 3 cardiac monitors. We had 13 cardiac monitors. So the number 1A and number 1B by the audit was cardiac monitors and ambulances. So that's been our focus, cardiac monitors and ambulances, and then stretchers if we can fit them in. So what we're looking at is 10 cardiac monitors, 10 more cardiac monitors. So we would get rid of all the old cardiac monitors. They'd all be gone, and we would have all brand new cardiac monitors as what was discussed in the audit, to having them all the same and having them all replaced. And that also helps we don't have to carry multiple different products, because they're going to be 2 different kind of cardiac monitors. And after we have that much money left over, which is a little over $300,000 for 10, how many ambulances can we get? And then however much money that's left over, how many stretchers we can get. So looking at that, we can get those 10 cardiac monitors and probably 4 ambulances, but we may not be able to get any stretchers. Again, 1A, 1B was cardiac monitors and ambulances. So that's going to be our primary focus.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just finish. Thank you, Nathan, for that
Yes, sir.
explanation. So does this 800,000, is it on top of the $5.7 million budget for EMS, or is it included in the 5.7?
This is capital outlay money, so this is not part of Fund 118's operating budget.
Okay. And the budget for EMS, Natalie, is 5.7 roughly?
It's over 5 million. I've got it over there if you want the exact number.
We had some debate on that at the operation.
5.625 or something.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Warfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To kind of go along with Commissioner Wandell's question, yes, sir, we did have a motion. I made that motion to have a monthly as far as what was spent out in EMS. To my knowledge, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll admit to it. I think I've seen 2 or 3 months that we've actually seen that out of 7 now. Nathan, and I don't want to micromanage, but I'm hearing from some of the people, and EMS does talk to county commissioners where you don't want them to, but they actually do. I'm hearing that the ambulances that we're looking at are not going to be big enough to have a stair chair, spine boards, and scoop stretchers to be put in there, that the compartments. No, if we're going to buy these new ambulances, kind of thing we need to make sure they fit what we actually need.
Yeah, and I would say that they're wrong.
That is wrong?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Those are required equipment for us to carry. At least the spine boards are required equipment. But the stair chairs is a valuable piece of equipment. We're going to make sure it's going to fit. And even looking at the smaller, like van transit style chassis, they actually, the designs that we have looked at, they have a specific spot for the stair chair to fit in.
Okay.
But backboards are a state requirement. Yeah,
Okay.
we have to carry those.
Are these new ambulances, will they be able to occupy 2 people to transport in case we have a catastrophic emergency, that we have a huge accident on I-75? I mean, there's going to be times that we cannot just transport 1 person. We need to be transporting two people at a time. Will these new ones that you're ordering, I mean, I want to spend and use our money as best as we possibly can, but if they can only transport 1, that's, I think we're going the wrong way.
Yeah, the
in my
designs that
opinion.
we have looked at are able to accommodate 2 patients. I will actually say that, we transport more than 1 patient less than 1% of the time. At the same time, if you have 2 patients and one of those patients is in the spot where the paramedic sits, what does that mean for the paramedic? They're standing up in a free-moving vehicle traveling down the road. I personally don't believe that's the best practice for our paramedics. What happens if somebody pulls out in front of that ambulance, which we had earlier last fiscal year, and a paramedic got launched ahead and smacked her face in the cabin? Is that a good practice for us to put our paramedics in an unsafe position, or should we just call a second ambulance in to take that second patient? So there's a lot of discussion on that, and we have to figure out what's best for the patient, but also what's best for the paramedic that's in the back. So there's a lot of thought on that, but the designs that we have looked at, yes, sir, we should be able to still accommodate 2 patients.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Creasy.
Nathan, in the budget meeting, if I recall correctly, and you can help me here, you mentioned that you could buy, I think, 3 ambulances. You're going to hopefully see if you could get 4, I believe you said. And you said you had a certain number for stretchers and a certain number for cardiac monitors.
Yeah.
A moment ago, you said you were looking at it in the reverse now, and you wanting to see what you can buy for $800,000.
No, we've always been approaching it from that perspective, is how much can we get with $800,000? Because that's kind of how it's been communicated to us. You're going to have $800,000 for capital outlay. So we've always looked at it from that way, as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to buy 4 ambulances, 4 stretchers, and 10 cardiac monitors, and here's what it's going to cost us. Because that would cost us more than $800,000, more than likely.
Okay.
And so we've looked at several different scenarios of the different types of ambulances, the different number of stretchers, the different number of cardiac monitors, and try to run through kind of a little, how many can we get and how much would add up to $800,000 and what we could get for that. And again, we haven't bid out the ambulances yet.
But I didn't want to misunderstand you there, because the way you said it, it may have meant that you were going to buy other items other than ambulance, stretchers, and cardiac monitors.
No.
I was wanting to be sure that you clarified that.
Yeah.
That is your three items
Yes,
that
sir.
you're looking to purchase with the 800,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Commissioner Yeager.
Thank you. There were about 1 million items in the audit. I may have remembered this wrong, but wasn't one of the needs I'm not sure, an oversized patient?
Bariatric.
There we go.
Yeah.
What's our plan for that?
So that would be something, as we discussed through developing our plan, we would try and figure out where in the future to add that item to our fleet. It's not an extreme cost. We've looked at them in the past. It's just a matter of finding out where we're going to put that in the plan for developing going
Is
forward.
that like a $50,000?
No,
extra?
sir. Actually, it's probably, for all the equipment, the last time I looked at it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It was around 16,000 for all
Okay.
of the equipment. But there's ramps, there's a winch, there's a specialized stretcher that go with that. And then you have to make sure you fit it into the right ambulance as well. But the last time we looked at it was about 16,000.
Okay, so the ambulances you're planning, are they all the same size except for the transport ones then? Are they all the same model?
Yes, they would be the same layout, the same model, the same design, trying to get eventually to more of a standardized fleet where all of our trucks are really designed relatively the same, whereas right now it's it's very makeshift because of what we've had to do in the past to buy ambulances. But that would be the ideal, is to have that unified fleet.
All right, thanks.
Commissioner Smallridge.
Yes. We've been talking about the audit report that we were waiting for what, 3 or 4 months now, at least. And the audit did identify as a top priority the need for ambulances, the stretchers, and the cardiac monitors. And I think it's imperative that we get started on that equipment. It isn't going to answer all the needs that we have in emergency management, but I know the mayor and you, Nathan, are working on a plan that they'll come back to us, an overall plan that will give us some further direction. But I really think we need to move ahead with getting this equipment.
Well, and one thing to keep in mind with that, cardiac or ambulances do take a while to build. So even if we do issue the bid and get it back and then award the bid, we're looking at 120 days before they're built and we pay for them. The cardiac monitors, they will hold off payment until after this revenue comes in. I got a meeting with Natalie on Wednesday to discuss some of these items. So her and I will be working, as we talked about at operations and budget committees, that Natalie and I will be meeting and discussing what the different options are and presenting that back.
Again, this will give us a start.
Yes, sir.
It's not going to resolve all the problems we've got,
That'd be a great start.
but I think we need to make a beginning.
Thank you.
Commissioner Emmert.
Thank you, Chairman.
Nathan, I feel the same way Mr. Warfield. EMS, the people that work there do talk to us, and they have the right to talk to us, whether you agree with that or not. And I'd found out that the new ambulances that you're getting are gas powered now versus diesel.
Yes.
Why is that?
So we looked at several different options, several different opportunities, what we could do with gas, really trying to downsize the weight of the box, and gas would being able to accommodate that. They're cheaper to buy, they're cheaper to maintain, they're cheaper to run. Ultimately, they are a cheaper option that still fulfill the same level of service.
What about longevity versus diesel, though?
Yeah, so that's also been discussed, and John Vickery, the motor pool, and I discussed quite a bit about that. Even if we replace the engine every 150,000 miles, we would save money on it.
Okay, I've also heard that we could have got almost 3 ambulances for what you paid for the 2 because you're not dealing with tailor-made anymore?
No, we got these ambulances, I think they're around 92,000 a piece for the remounts that we got.
But they're not tailor-made, right?
No, sir, they're not. They're
why are we not dealing with tailor-made
first
anymore?
priority. Really, to be honest with you, tailor-made just doesn't have a good product.
I figured that's what you'd say, because they said that's what you'd say, so. But there's, it's
You could,
okay.
you still have contact with the auditors, ask them. Ask them what their perception is on tailor-made, and they are lower level, lower rung ambulance manufacturers. That's
Okay.
not a secret.
Okay.
I recommend, reach out to the auditors, ask their opinion.
And as far as, we're talking about a lot of money, and I believe in spending money wisely. I still can't get over the fact that 2 of our employees were laid off, and you told the budget or finance that was, you don't have to speak about it. You're getting paid by tax dollars. You're also getting money from Medicaid and Medicare, and we never talk about that. You're getting money from the county, plus you're getting that kind of money, and we are to have an elite EMS service if you have got an open checkbook, is the way I see it. But you sent one of the employees that was laid off or fired to Las Vegas twice, and then the very next week they come back, you terminate them. Is there a reason for, is that good business sense?
I don't think that's something I can discuss openly,
Why?
sir.
You're over the department.
Well, I think we have to, yeah.
It's already been filed against us and served on us right now.
Okay.
That'll all come out in discovery.
Okay.
Hopefully we can handle that for
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Denenberg. Mayor.
Nathan did not say what Commissioner Emmert said in Budget Committee, so I just want to clarify that. Nathan did present one position downsizing, and he is working with Fleet Service in a way that's going to save the county money and enable us to purchase more equipment. I understand that it may not have been a popular decision, but he was forthright about that during the budget process. So he is always has an open door, and twice tonight has been stated that employees are not allowed to talk to commissioners. That is not accurate. When we're talking about a chain of command issue, if there is, for instance, an allegation of wrongdoing within a department, it is the very same way within the sheriff's department. You don't go to county commission first, you go through the chain of command. You go to your sergeant, you go to your lieutenant, you go to the chief, you go to the sheriff. If you do not get a response, then you should go to your county commissioner. It's only about a chain of command issue. Anyone is welcome to talk to commissioners anytime, and I think that has been occurring. No one has been disciplined for that, so I just want to clarify for anyone watching at home.
Okay. Commissioner Denenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nathan, my question is really very simple. Clarification, if you are transporting 2 patients, where does the paramedic sit?
Oftentimes they don't.
How are they secure?
They're not.
There's no way of some type of jump seat or
There is a jump seat, but when you're talking especially about critical patients or patients that need care, that jump seat puts them at the head of the patients on the stretcher and not out or without, beyond the reach of what would be the second patient. So they wouldn't be able to go and check vitals. They wouldn't be able to go and talk with the patient. They wouldn't be able to administer medications and start IVs and all those things while they're transporting. So they would be unrestrained, probably in between those 2 patients.
Thank you.
Commissioner Meade.
I recall that this commission spent about $40,000 to get an independent operational assessment. And those people came back after a long period of time and they said, the most important things you got to do to get your service and keep it giving a reasonable response time and the quality of service that our EMS is noted for doing a pretty good job of what they do. But they came out and said, we need ambulances, we need cardiac monitors, we need stretchers. And this committee talked about that at several different levels. And we had agreed that in this, and then Natalie found money in the budget from capital money in order to go ahead and fund this stuff. I think this has all been agreed to in advance, and now we're just trying to put it on paper. I don't understand the problem. I've been telling people for quite a long time that in the new budget, we got $800,000 for capital equipment for the EMS, And there's about another $300,000 in operational money. Because the operational team that we paid all that money to told us that that's what you have to do or your system is gonna really start going downhill dramatically. Because our equipment is very old, it needs to be replaced. In the cardiac monitors, you talk about the fact you want to have them all the same. Do you really want the guy that's taking care of you when you're having a heart attack trying to figure out how to run the machine that he doesn't normally run? I think they need to have them that are common enough that it'll work. I think we need to go ahead with this. I don't understand why there's all this discussion.
Commissioner Val?
I was going to offer a solution. Perhaps Nathan could, after meeting with Natalie, come back to Budget Committee, produce an actual list of the items to be purchased so that you can approve those just what that equipment is and not just $800,000 for equipment.
My suggestion was going to be similar to that. And along with that, Nathan, I was going to ask, Commissioner Mead's correct. We've already discussed step 1, step 2, step 3 of how we were going to address these issues. One of those steps was you were going to form a plan and come back to us short-term and long-term. My question to you is this. Who are you? Do you have a team that's forming this plan, that's setting your priorities, that you're saying, okay, this is what we ought to do first, this is what we should do second?
Yeah, we've reached out to quite a few people, and we've got those discussions. We're getting ready to get started with those individuals. And some of them actually sat on the audit committee, so they'll be quite easy to catch up with.
Are you at liberty to name them?
Yeah, sure. Jody Turner is one that she was on the audit committee as well. She's got a billing background, healthcare billing background. Robin Smith with the Oak Ridge Police Department. We've got Stephanie Fox with Marlowe Volunteer Fire Department, fire chief down there, that we've reached out to, and she's going to help serve on that. Of course, myself, the mayor, Ann Jordan, public citizen, that I believe lives down in the Marlowe area. That's also going to sit on that. So we've got some citizen input. We've got some volunteer, because I really think that part of our plan really needs to be how can we help the volunteer departments in their first response, and I think that's a part of our plan going forward. Yeah, and I believe that's it.
Do you have a team of your EMS employees that have experience that are making suggestions to you?
Well, sure, yeah, and there's going to be some discussion or some feedback and input, and they all have the opportunity to provide some of that. But, you know, Stephanie Fox is also a part-time employee with us, and she's been with us for quite some time. She also sat on the audit committee.
And the reason I ask is I always like to solicit opinions from people that are in the trenches, that are actually out there every day and are seeing and hearing things that I may not hear.
Sure.
So that was my reason. Are we going to have a good comprehensive
right
group effort?
Yeah, we're definitely going to, and I've had some quite a few informal meetings that I've sat down with some of our staff and say, what would you like to see? And there's a lot of that input in the audit as well, things for areas for improvement and some of their feedback as well, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to ask why you just don't bring a list saying, this is what it's going to cost and this is how much we need. So that was very well stated, Mayor. What are you going to do with the old monitors? As you're replacing them, where do they go?
They trade in.
To the company that
Yes,
you're actually purchasing from?
Yeah, we trade in and they give us $4,000 towards the new monitor.
Okay, and what about ambulances?
Ambulances, we've not really seen much of any value on trade-in those in the past, so we're going to look at different options. We've had some law enforcement in the past that have asked for them. We've had TCAT that's asked for one. We might use them for alternate means. You know, we talked about that, maybe using one for using decedent transports. So we're looking at different options.
Can you not also look to perhaps offer it to the volunteer fire departments?
Sure.
Whether it's to stock, you know, necessary equipment and or needs. Sometimes they're out on a scene for an extended period of time. They need a vehicle that can just roll out to that site. whether it's to bring, Visine for their eyes or dry socks for their feet or just whatever's needed.
Sure, yeah, if they have an interest, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Commissioner Fritz.
We may not like this, and we may not like that, and we may not like this little thing over here and that little thing over there. But we've, as Commissioner Meade said and Commissioner Warfield said, we've had an independent audit come up, and we know that we've got people who are experts in the field throughout the, and have been doing it throughout the whole state, country, and everything else, says that it's our job, the commission's job, to make sure that the EMS has this type of equipment. The equipment that they say we gotta have far exceeds the amount of money that we've got to spend. So trying to say, come back with a list, this, that, and other, I mean, we got more equipment needs than what he has to spend. We need to go ahead and say this, there's the money, go buy what you can, and then as we hopefully in the future, when we ever get more money, you can finish getting the rest of it. But as he already said, he can get all the cardiac monitors, he can get the ambulance, but he can't get the stretchers. So I mean, we need to act on this, and let's do what we paid the auditor said. Let's not do what the operational audit we paid many years ago did, and not do nothing. Let's finally do what we paid to have done, and do what the auditors told us to do.
Do we have a motion? What it read? First and the second, okay. Who is the maker and the second? Who's the maker and who made the second? Okay, all right. Commissioner Warfield.
Nathan, and I can't recall the correct name, if you can help me out. There was a committee long before the audit committee, the EMS audit committee. You all had a committee. I think Dr. Sexton was on, I want to use the term advisory committee, but you all had an internal one that you all used.
It was an advisory committee.
Was advisory committee?
Yeah.
Do you have those same members? It just seems like if you've got a advisory committee, that would be the core group that you're having. Do you have those folks on this same group saying, well, we probably need to look at buying this item or anything?
Well, I did reach out to that committee by email if they wanted to be on the task force, and none of them.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Meade.
Yeah, I appreciate you speaking, just very briefly. All this stuff, some people sound like they're thinking that if we approve this, he just has that money to go buy anything he wants. Everything he buys has to go through the whole purchasing process, and every single purchase has to be approved by this board. This is not just letting him go off wild. We're going to see every single item, and we'll approve every single one. Right.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Let's go to the board and vote.
Well, not quite yet.
Motion passes. Let the record reflect 2 no votes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Wandell.
Thank you. Since I get a chance to speak why I voted no, I would like to do that now. I'm voting no, not because the EMS does not need the equipment. I think everybody in this room and everybody in this county knows our EMS needs equipment. I think the question is the management. I'm not here to debate whether we get awards, accolades. I'm here to debate the financial piece of EMS, the management piece of EMS. I think, Mr. Chairman, it's fair for us to ask questions of the EMS. I think it's fair to ask questions why we would send a gentleman for leadership training. I want to clarify what Commissioner Emmerich said. We didn't send somebody, or EMS didn't send somebody to Vegas to spin the slots machine. They sent somebody to Vegas to get leadership training. When the person got back, apparently we terminated, fired, or whatever method we used that was used by the EMS director, and I want the folks at home, Mr. Chairman, to understand what happened. There's a great amount of money expended there. Now, for these commissioners to sit around and make it sound like we need to just dump more money in because the audit says so, that kind of irritates me. I'll put more money in, but I think this body deserves black and white information, because that audit also says the mayor and the EMS director will come to us with a plan. In fact, that was the #1 item on the audit, not more ambulances. We don't have a plan. That is the problem we're having in EMS. No plan. Let's just envision for a second. What if Mr. Chairman, I'm speaking, and if you can't get order and let me have the floor, then please take care of it.
Let's calm down. And
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have the floor. I'm tired of people jumping in.
Floor, Commissioner.
Then why don't you address the right person?
What do you mean?
Who interrupted?
A point of order is a parliamentary, it is allowed according to parliamentary
Mr. Chairman, I will
procedure.
withdraw my statements. It's obvious it's not comfortable.
The decorum
As I said, I
is
voted
not
no because I'm
proper.
not going to spend any more taxpayers' dollars. And I understand they got to go through budget, but I'm voting no on spending any more money at EMS until I see a plan from the mayor and the EMS director. If anyone listens to the comments, you hear different things. Well, we met. Well, we didn't met. Oh, we're going to buy ambulances. Oh, we're not sure we're going to buy ambulances. So for me to make a decision to spend dollars, I kind of have trouble with that. And I'm sorry if the mayor doesn't understand that. And I'm sorry if my fellow commissioners don't understand that. And I will now shut up, take a drink of water. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make a note for the future. Parliamentary procedure says you cannot challenge the motives or intents. That behavior that was displayed is not appropriate according to a working body. If the commissioner wants to approach me and have those comments, that is fine, but this body is to conduct business. There are not other departments that are brought up and called out in that kind of form or fashion. There are a lot of people that come and go within this county. There is a great, wonderful employee that left on Friday. That is not brought up here in front of this body. And so I just would like to note that in the future, I hope that you will call order when the level of animosity is clear for everyone to see. I don't think it's productive to the working group.
Point taken. Commissioner Warfield.
Well, I'll go back to what I stated on, and Commissioner Wandale mentioned. I still haven't been told why that we haven't been given a monthly accounting of EMS. And I brought that up a long time ago, and we were told, yes, we would get that. And we got that three times. You know, I don't understand that. Yes, it may be that the mayor is not maybe, the mayor is in charge of this department, but we are in charge of putting out the tax dollars of the citizens. Not one department, not one person. We are in charge of it. And I think we need to use the taxpayers' funds wisely. Commissioner Wandale, I agree with you. I don't think we've been using those funds wisely in that.
Chairman Isabel, I believe those, Nathan, and I don't know if there was a motion that was made, he would have abided by it. Maybe it was for the fiscal year, but those financials he got from finance every month, and they were submitted into the operations report.
That's correct.
It doesn't mean, I mean, they were rarely addressed, but he did get that. He would go to finance, he would pull those records, and they were submitted monthly to the operations committee.
That's correct.
And they are always available in the finance office as well, so.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
I'm not gonna let that go. Yes, I can go to finance and I can ask Natalie, will you print this out for me? But that doesn't tell me what was bought with those codes. That doesn't tell me, yes, we went to Lowe's and we bought $3,000 worth of 2x4s. We only used $2,000 worth of 2x4s. We've got the rest of them in stock. That's not, nobody has been in banking like I have. That is not a way that you do checks and balances with a system. No, that's going to Natalie and say, will you print me off a report? No, that's not right.
Let's move on. Operations Committee report. Let's see, Natalie, are you done? No. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner Freed.
This right here, next up, I reckon, is what I put on the agenda. Last year, we had a fund out there. It was in the building and zoning office for the cleanup of property throughout the county. And that wasn't used last year, and that rolled back into the general fund. We have several pieces of property out there in the Claxton area. Two of them in specifically it's caught fire and burnt, and have been sitting there for long periods of time. They are now safety hazards. They're rodent infested and all kinds of other animal infested areas, and they're within subdivisions areas, and the neighbors have put up with this thing for very long, extensive periods of time. And what I'd like to do is, since the budget cycle's already gone, is we've actually underestimated the amount of money that would come in with the building permits, and we can increase the building code money that come in through building permits up another $10,000, and use that extra money from the building permits and put that back into this code here for cleanup, and so that money will be available. So when it goes through the legal system, which it is already in the legal system, lawsuits have already been filed and everything, we'll have funds readily available, so the county can immediately address these areas and get it took care of, so the citizens won't have to wait no longer on us to get these properties addressed. And so that's my motion, and that's the purpose of this amendment here that she's already got drawn up and ready to act for us, is to increase the revenue for that one thing, $10,000, and put it back into the cleanup fund for the
Other contracted services
other contracted services
for $10,000.
for $10,000.
Have a motion and second. Any discussion? Let's go to the board and vote. Motion passes.
That's all I have.
Okay. Budget Committee, let's see, Operations Committee report.
Before we go, thank everybody.
Let's see. Budget operations. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I had to pull it up here. Mr. Chairman, the Operations Committee met on July 9th, 2018. All members were present. First item that was discussed is 205 Street Update and Senior Center. Upon motion made by Commissioner Emmert, seconded by Commissioner Mead, to allow the law director to prepare a lease agreement on the current location, the Portwood Building, on a month-to-month basis.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Wandell?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to add that we currently have a lease at that location through October, but I understand this is a need just in case we need to perhaps go past October. I'll plan to support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's go to the board and vote. To extend the lease.
Yes, sir, okay, sorry.
Jay, is it to extend or draft a new one?
It's a month by month.
Go to month to month.
It's a new month-by-month term.
So it's a new lease?
Yes, sir, and it's gonna have a provision in it that we can cancel within 30 or 60 days, whatever you like, in case we find a new location.
When will it take effect? After October or before?
At the end of this.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, was upon motion made by Commissioner Alderson to forward to Purchasing Committee upon the recommendation of Mayor Frank to go ahead with putting 205 Main Street property on the market and start accepting bids on the property. Motion was seconded by Commissioner McCamey. We had one no vote, Commissioner Emmett. I so move.
Have a motion, we have a second.
I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner Alderson, I'm just reading the minutes from those minutes were sent out after the meeting, and if you didn't have a chance to look at them, I apologize. We can certainly amend it now if you'd like.
I actually made the motion.
Commissioner McCamey says he made the motion to forward it to the person.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know who made the motion. I'm just reading the minutes that we all received after the meeting, and if there's any changes, I suggest that the members of the operation review those minutes and make the changes and send them back to Annette for the changes to be properly be reflected. I apologize. I read them as is, and that's what I did. If we'd like to make a change to the minutes, I'm open to take that recommendation now.
We have a motion on the floor now.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a
I'll
motion
withdraw
and a
the
second.
motion to the original motion maker, Mr. McCamey, and let him restate his motion.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make the motion then to forward to the Purchasing Committee on the recommendation of Mayor Frank to go ahead with putting 205 Main Street property on the market and start accepting bids on the property.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
You have discussion. Commissioner Meade.
Yeah, this will, what was discussed is this offer would be subject to any bid that's made is still subject to refusal by the commission if it's not sufficient. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. That was what was agreed. Is that correct, Mr. Law Director?
There's always a provision in our bid procedures that says we can reject all bids, and I think that's what Commissioner McCamey's relied upon.
Commissioner Creasy.
Yeah, that was what I was pressing the button for, because for us to put it on the market, I understand we have to declare it surplus. Is that correct?
That is correct. That was been talked about, and it's been referred to the Purchasing Commission. That's 2 levels now. It has to be approved by the Purchasing Committee as surplus, and then it comes back to this body to be approved as surplus.
And
That
when
all
we-
has to happen before anything else can happen.
When we declare it surplus, we're saying we don't need the property.
That's correct.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
It's very hard.
Then the mayor will handle the sale of the property.
No, purchasing will handle that.
Oh, it's gonna be sent to purchasing? Okay. Normally, the mayor handles surplus property sales.
No, normally it's handled by purchasing now. The argument was to whether or not to set a minimum threshold bid. And some believe that, let anybody bid whatever they want to, reject all bids if it's not sufficient. Others believe that we should set a minimum threshold of perhaps what we've got in it. And let everybody know we're not gonna take anything less, we're not gonna lose money. And so that was the debate.
Yeah, and I'm confusing the tax property sales that you handle, right?
Yes.
And I'm sorry.
That
about
is
that.
correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
You answered my question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Emmett.
Thank you, Chair. I just want the record to reflect that the reason I voted no, I still think it's a bad idea to sell the property. We bought a building and then turned around and expected it to, accommodate the seniors. We never put anything in it to accommodate them. We didn't restructure offices. We didn't do anything. We just bought a building. So we find another building unless we build new, and you all know what it's gonna cost if we build new per square foot. So if we don't build new, guess what? When we find another building, we're gonna have to revamp it as well. So I just want the record to show and reflect that I'm totally against the sale of this property.
Commissioner McCamey.
Mr. Chairman, let me point out that when we declare a piece of property surplus, it does not necessarily mean that we have to dispose of it. We keep surplus property sometimes 10 years. We've got property that's already been declared surplus. And any other department in the county that could use that department, that building and land, are welcome to it. But we would still have to declare it surplus to let any other entity utilize it. So, this is just send it to the purchasing department, let them declare it surplus. Schools do it all the time. They declare an old school building surplus, turn it back over to the county, and then we decide what we want to do with it. But when they just declare it surplus, it just means that they don't want to use it anymore. And we don't right now have a use for it, so we declare it surplus, and then somebody might come along and say, hey, I need the building. So it's, this don't necessarily mean that we're getting rid of it next month or the next month.
Good explanation.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Warfield.
Jay, and I'm not saying that Commissioner McCamey is wrong, but is Commissioner McCamey correct in that? Even if we do declare, I'm like Jerry, I have, that's a hard pill to swallow to say we bought it, then we're going to turn around and we're going to declare it as surplus. If we declare, no, go ahead, Jay, you're fine.
Always had situations where we repurposed and reassigned property. Just because, I know there may be a stigma attached by declaring something surplus, doesn't mean we may in the future say we need it for another reason. Or after this whole process goes through and we see that we can't sell it, that has to come back to this to accept that bid. Remember, this has to be approved by this body. You may not accept that bid, and you may say, this is where the senior center is going to be, and the mayor has brought forward another plan that would allow you to raise that structure. You may in turn, you've also got that option to fix that building up to our standards. It's not, once we declare it surplus, doesn't mean that's it.
It's not permanent.
The options are still open.
Okay, well.
You're correct.
I just want to make sure.
But the big issue is it must be declared surplus before we can start the bidding process.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
And now that is 2 levels of approval, remember, not just the purchasing committee.
Just want to make sure
It has to come back to this body.
I just want to make sure that
You are
I'm
correct.
clear on that.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
you're clear.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Smallridge.
And I may be out of order. I'm not directly addressing the motion, but I have a general comment. Is that okay? It seems like we've had a number of problems lately with the buildings we've either purchased or we've taken over and renovated for some specific purpose. And then after the fact, problems come to light. And I realize with a renovation, or you're going to run into problems, unforeseen conditions and things like that. That happens. But I was wondering, do we have, I guess a question, do we have professionals come in and do a formal evaluation of that facility before we decide we're going to buy it, we're going to renovate it? I think we ought to be looking at the major systems, HVAC, electricity, structural problems. I think it would save us a lot of money in the long run if we would do that. And we may be doing that, I don't know, but I guess I'd suggest that's something we look at anyway.
That provision is in any land purchase or building purchase that we do has an inspection provision. And I think you've seen a few of the ones I've done. In this particular one, I believe it was paragraph 13. We can do all the inspections that we want to do that, provided this body's willing to pay for them. And that's available to you at any time. And I would advise you never to approve a purchase contract on any building or any piece of property until you've exhausted all the inspections that you want on that. That's the only prudent course of action. That's why that paragraph is in all our purchasing contracts.
I think it could be well worth the money to do those kinds of inspections.
Commissioner White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My only comment is, I'd hate to see us sell this building before we've come up with a alternate plan. I know Ms. Portwood is gracious enough to give us, to extend our contract or to extend our month-to-month agreement, but the seniors are gonna be here forever. And we've got a good piece of land there, a good centrally located piece of property. We've paid for it. I can recall the night we bought that, people were standing all over this floor in here, literally begging us to buy that. We bought it in good faith. And before we sell it to Rusty Wallace or somebody, let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with a plan. Let's see what our options are. Maybe we could, as Dr. Smallridge said, maybe we could get the right people in there to tell us what it needs to bring it up to standard to where that the seniors could use that and be content and happy. And I just think to sell it or to declare it surplus is just sending the wrong message to everybody. It's my comment. And I'm going to be like Tracy over there. I'm going to vote no that we don't do anything with it until we decide what we need and what we want. And this time, let's do it right. Thank you, sir.
Hold on a second, Mayor. Commissioner Scott.
Oh, I have two questions. And first, well, one is a comment. Commissioner White, you're very correct. The way you phrased it, you're right. There was a room full of people, and we were being told, this is exactly what we need. We've checked it out. Yes, it's going to suit us just fine. Yes, this is what we want. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I recall Jay saying, you know, yeah, it's good to go. Oh, you know, the contract and et cetera, you don't need to go check it out. It's good to go. We're here to appropriate the funds, to give the funds out. And when someone steps up and says, we need this money and this is why we need it and this is what we're going to do with it, well, so be it. Here's the money. But for anyone to come back to commission and say, it's all y'all's fault. You bought a building that was bad. Wait a minute, you just asked for the money and you sold us a good show. So I do agree with what you're saying. And at the same time, Mayor, have you not gotten an appraisal as of yet?
No, all of this was discussed at Operations Committee. And I'm also supposed to come back with, as part of the discussion on whether we set a minimum price, one of the requests of the committee was that I come back with Roger's best guess of what it would take to repair the
Modify
building.
it, okay.
So to fortify the envelope of the building, to deal with any roof issues. And then the area where he was going to have to make a guess was that laundry list of issues such as the sewer, you know, the kitchen not being tied into the sewer system, you know, the mechanical issues. So he's going to guess on that, come back to you all, because you need to you have to have that information in order to know what to do.
Right.
This particular motion, Commissioner Wandell said, Mayor, what do you recommend? And I said, I recommend we go ahead. There is someone who's interested. And if I went out and bought something and I thought I bought a Cadillac and I got home and really the panels fell off and it was a 76 Pinto, and it's going to take a lot of money to bring it up to speed, I might cut my losses and just ask that I could get my money back for what I paid for it. So I don't think it's a wrong business decision to say, we don't have the time or the funds to build this back up to speed. Let's just get back what we paid for it, and then we'll look for another option. I will say this, and some of this was discussed at operations. There are many other ideas that are floating around, and in fact, I talked to Commissioner Isbell this morning and I asked if he would be agreeable to a work session where we bring together the schools, the senior programs, other departments that might have an interest in this facility, because others do. And I have had others express that interest. I've had the city of Clinton is now looking at maybe the armory is available again. I know we took that off the agenda, but if we're looking at cost, you know, maybe that's something we look at again. But I think a work session where it's a non-voting environment, where all of these parties can get together and talk about what those solutions are. But as commissioners who appropriate, as you say, and you allocate space,
Right.
you all need to know what it's going to take to be in compliance.
Well, and
So-
at the same time, I think, you know, after listening to discussion between operations as well as this evening, I mean, I'm one of the ones that said, put it up for 1.35 million, so that not only can we get our money back, but we'll be able to take that on to the next place that we go to. But listening to discussion here this evening, like I said, plus what was going on at operations, I'm going to vote no. And the reason why I'm doing that is merely because we've got to look at other alternatives. Maybe a work session would be a good thing. But this was a piece of property. You're correct, Commissioner White. It was a piece of property that was it. And if it's it, but it's got the wheels fallen off, we need to figure out how to put the wheels back on. And what is it going to cost to make it the grand palace that we want it to be? As opposed to, gee, there's a piece of property over there for sale, and you know, this is what we want to do with it. Okay, buy it. I mean, we just can't keep going around and buying property or jumping at, you know, the opportunity when it's presented immediately.
Well, I think to Commissioner Smallridge's point, and Finance Committee actually addressed some of these issues with regard to, let's put in place some policies and procedures so that we understand the process. We understand how, you know, where's the flow or the chain of command, or who's responsible for the communication on leases, on the county properties, on all of these issues. And I think that's where some of the confusion took place. And I think putting policies in place where there's a black and white, here's how it's going to proceed, is the best way to deal with it. Frankly, I just think if we could sell it, that would be what I would like to do. As I told folks at operations, there is someone interested, and I told that individual I'm not authorized to negotiate. And in addition, it would be a situation where the county has to do a bid process. So as you saw with the general sessions remodeling, you know, I'm of the opinion if we could get back what we paid for it, you know, the notes paid off, we don't have to get into, oh, we missed that, or we peel back this wall and that's there. I think that's a viable option. But again, there are other departments that are interested in it. And so we will make the best of it. I believe we will.
I just
think
don't
we all
want to
will.
see the seniors staying in a small facility and having to deal with it because they don't have anywhere else to go. Whereas 6 months ago, they got the spot.
Well,
and it didn't turn out to be what we expected it to be, any of us.
I did not initiate the request for the month-to-month for the Teresa Portwood property because it is too small. And it is an issue.
But in
and
the
so we
meantime,
are
it's
looking at
big.
other properties. And in fact, I have an offer at 40 cents a square foot right now for 6,700 square foot facility, which almost triples the square footage. It's a better deal, much better deal for square feet, and we can pay for it out of the grant funds as they are now. So I think that is a viable option. And you know, I've looked at it. Now we're going to go back with Roger and Cherie and look at that particular facility. So they need ASAP. That lease expires October 31st. They do legitimately need more space. So.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Commissioner Creasy.
Yeah, just wanted to ask if do we have to do this tonight, or can we put this off for a month? And I'm kind of asking Robert, do you see a need that we make the decision tonight to sell, or do we want to have more discussion, maybe at operations, or?
Well, that was what I was going to try to explain since I'm next on there. And I'm glad you asked the question, but
I was hoping you would,
this
that was
is
what you was
the
wanting.
first step of a two-step thing, like the law director said. It's coming back to us. We are not declaring it surplus tonight. We're referring this to the motion is to refer it to the purchasing committee to let them declare it surplus. They will make their recommendation back to us. So we would, in essence, we're going to be deferring it for a month. We're not making that decision tonight. This is just to send it to purchasing, which is the first step of the process. And then it will come back to us, and at that time, we can either accept it or reject declaring it surplus. In the meantime, I hope to have some additional information that I will be able to share with the commission. We are looking at some other properties just this week, and there is some interest from another department within the county on that building. So, you know, we're not declaring it surplus tonight, but we are starting the process.
I can see us repeating what we went through before and what Dr. Smallridge spoke on. We approved the mayor to go and get an appraisal. And I think she's been approved by Budget Committee for the money to hire a person to do the appraisal. We were criticized when we purchased the building by not having certain checks and inspections done before we purchased it, before we voted to purchase it. And it seems to me that we may be repeating what we did then by not waiting for the mayor to come back with her information from the appraisal. And I feel that let's wait till she gets the appraisal before we vote to sell it. We know what we'll be asking or what we'll be looking for, and I don't want to repeat the same mistakes. We rushed into purchasing that land for the convenience center. The mayor did take control and then did some inspections and followed a plan prior to that, but we were ready to buy it without those steps and those checks. And I don't want to repeat that. And it feels like to me that we're sort of jumping the gun again. And do you feel like that it would hurt if we didn't buy it or pass tonight and wait till next month to make that decision?
Well, like I said, this is step one of the two-step process. And if we get this, go ahead and approve this motion to refer it, and they may not even act on it. The person agent may decide not to act on it. I mean, they have to do that before we can't just declare it surplus ourselves. But it's going to be at least another month before it comes back to us. And within that month, we should have the information that we need to make a decision.
I think I'd rather wait to get that information.
Commissioner McCamey, are you done?
Yeah, that's
Commissioner Denenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I distinctly remember sitting in the second row the night that vote was taken. And I distinctly remember thinking to myself, in fact, commenting to the person who was sitting next to me, where are the reports? Where are the appraisals? You don't go and buy a piece of property, whether it's residential or commercial, without them. I, this evening, will vote no, simply because I will not proceed on this piece of property until we know what we're dealing with. When we know what it's going to cost for renovations, what we know, if there are other departments that are interested. We have too many questions and not enough answers. And I think that I've said all I need to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz.
I don't know whether a lot of people don't understand the situation or not. This vote tonight, the vote at purchasing, and even if it comes back to us and we vote again to surplus it, doesn't commit us to anything. The law director just come up here and told us, this doesn't commit us to anything. We can surplus it, and that doesn't mean anything. It's just part of the process, so it gives us options down the road if we want to. So this vote doesn't mean anything. It just gives us the options. So later on, if we... That's right. And so... No, you still don't understand. It's part of the process that we have to follow, and so we want to go down that road in the future.
Right. The issue is it must be declared surplus before the bids can go out. If you want to see how much the bids are going to come in at, we've got to declare it surplus again. And this is not a new rule. We've had this, it was in the 57 Purchasing Act. Before we can sell a piece of property, it has to be declared surplus. What you're doing tonight is basically referring it to the purchasing committee for that first step, for them to declare it surplus, which in turn has to come back to this body for you to declare it surplus. At that point, they bid it, get the bids in, see where it's at, and you can decide to accept a bid on that property or reject that bid or all bids. You're looking at going down a course of maybe 3 different routes that's time sensitive. You're looking at a possibility of a new building that the mayor or the seniors or Robert is going to bring in here for us to look at. You're looking at perhaps maybe selling this property or repurposing this property by surplus. And you're looking at, in the future, we may decide to keep this property. I'm not really sure what you're going to do, but you have these options ahead of you. This vote tonight is nothing but to refer it to purchasing, to take that first step that'll come back to you. And you've got to remember, this is not an ultimate vote. There's several layers of votes on top of it. The Portwood lease, that is something that all operations did, was give me the authority to go ahead and draft that lease just in case we need extra time. Doesn't mean we could come in here in October. We don't have to approve that lease until October when the other one expires. And you have a new building ready to proceed on. And you say, well, we don't need this building. But as we all know, things move here slow. We want to secure a place, an interim place. We know the Portwood building is not a permanent location for the seniors. But if we have a place secured for them that we can cancel on a 30 or 60-day notice to move to a new center, that way we know they've got a home until we find them a new location, renovate the existing structure, whatever we're going to do. We're trying to proceed down 3 paths at the same time. It's all sort of time sensitive because we know that at the end of October, we're out of that building. We want our seniors to have some place until we can patch this thing up, get them in a new place, repair the building at 205, or whatever we so desire. But just because you give me authority to write the lease, I would not tell you to approve that lease and enter into that lease until the other one is expired. We're trying to proceed down 3 routes so we can secure all avenues and make sure that we're not out of a place on October 31st. We're not sitting without somewhere to go. And just because we start moving in one direction, like approving this for a bid, doesn't mean we have to sell the property. It doesn't mean it at all. The vote on the ultimate vote on that was when you would accept a bid for sale, and that's way on down the line. That's after purchasing approves it for bidding, you approve it as surplus, it goes out for bid, you decide whether or not you're gonna reject these bids, you're gonna accept one. We're talking about, folks, the best we could do around here is 3 or 4 months on this. And I hope you understand that. You're not pigeonholing yourself. You're leaving all these options open, but you are proceeding in a path to where we may come up with a good idea in the future, whatever it is. You're leaving all your options open. One thing for certain is we know Portwood will expire at the end of October. Well, this does nothing except start one of the phases and nothing more than that.
Are you done, Commissioner Fritz?
Yeah.
Commissioner Meade?
This doesn't make a decision to sell a property. This doesn't make a decision to even list the property as no longer necessary or needed. Voting no on this motion is simply deciding that you don't want to know if selling might even be an option. I think if there's people that are willing to make offers on this property, we would like to know what that is before we decide what the heck we're gonna do. So if you've decided you don't want to know, you just can't even accept knowing what the other options are, that tells me you don't want to know the information that you need to make a knowledgeable decision. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Let's go to the board and vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If you don't mind, sir, could we restate the motion before we vote?
The motion was to forward the purchasing fee upon the recommendation of MagFrank to go ahead with putting 2005 Main Street property on the market and start accepting bids on the property.
Do you have the maker of the motion and who seconded, please?
McCain, and you were the second.
Thank you.
That does have the word surplus in it.
Mr. Chairman, I would only add that we did receive an email July 6, 2018, from the law director, which is a 2015 appraisal for 2205 Main. That appraisal was $675,000. After we take this motion, I'm going to make a motion to add that to the minutes of this meeting for folks to be able to see that later in life. I'm ready for the motion, if we can proceed. The original motion.
I'm gonna be quick. Mayor, can you bring back at this next meeting, you talked about 40 cents a square foot or something of that nature. You talked about another entity within our county government wanting to use that or do some trading, whatever the case may be. Can you bring all of this back? I mean, I'm just about to call for the question, but it seems like that you've got a lot of information that we probably really ought to know and not be waiting to declare it surplus, not be waiting to see how much we can get. But can you bring all this information back to us and we can have a logical discussion and make a logical decision on what we need to do?
Yes, but I think a workshop in the interim before we come back for a full meeting would be best because we can get all these parties together. I mean, I have different people coming to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Other people that are looking at other properties, and so it's a daily, I mean, I looked at a property or a couple of properties and I mentioned that at the operations meeting, and then since then I've seen another property, so, and other folks are talking, so I think a workshop, getting all of these folks together is the ideal thing sooner rather than later, and then whatever carryover there is to the operational, operations committee or budget or wherever you all want it to go, I would think operations.
Well, can you get a committee put together really quick and let's.
Well, I mean, I wasn't even gonna do a committee, I was just gonna say, hey, let's have a
Workshop.
meeting, let's
Okay.
have a workshop
I'm
and
sorry.
send out open
Committee's a bad
invitation.
term.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no votes, just a workshop where everybody could, instead of me, one commissioner calls or one person calls and then I'm trying to transmit that to different people, so, I don't want to overwhelm commission with every single place that I'm looking at if it's not going to work, or, I mean, there's one that's ideal, but, it's a champagne budget kind of place, so I just immediately know that's that's off the list, so, but yes, I'll put that together.
Okay. I don't think we can use the jail area, though. I think that's
Oh,
one.
that was one idea that was.
Yeah, it's my, I don't know, I could be wrong. Shane I don't think we can use jail, can we? I'm not talking about the
Smallridge.
jail.
Hold on a second, let's get back on track. Commissioner Smallridge.
Just a quick question. Do we have, or can we get a fairly firm estimate on what it would take to bring that building up to standards, that it would make it suitable for our seniors? And that seems to me a very important question to know, even relative to what somebody might pay us for the building.
Yes, and that I'm supposed to actually bring that back to operations, but I can also bring that to the workshop, so that's one of the discussions that we have. We have a pretty good idea just from the inspection documents, whether it was the structural engineer, the architects, and then also the one inspection that looked at, some of the more minor details. Our original intent was to go out to bid on those minor issue, I say minor, not something structural or like a roof issue. And we have not done that. So that's where Roger's going to have to kind of guesstimate what he thinks that would cost, but we'll give you a ballpark.
Commissioner McCamey.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I guess the motion that was made in operations was to go ahead upon the recommendation of Mayor Frank to go ahead with putting 205 Main Street property on the market and start accepting bids on the property. I would like to strike that from my original motion and just refer 205 South Main to the purchasing committee to have them to declare it surplus. We can decide at a later date, because this, if you go with the original motion, it's going ahead and starting the sale. But again, like I said, this is step one, just to refer it to the purchasing committee to have them to look at declaring it surplus, to come back to us. And I'd like to withdraw all that about putting it up for sale and all that as part of the motion. Just this is step one, and we can decide what we want to do, when and if it's declared surplus. It's a
Commissioner
piece of,
Wandale, you second that?
Sure.
Okay. We have a new motion. Any discussion on the new motion? Let's go to the board and vote. Motion passes. For the letter, record reflect 4 no votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said earlier, I'd like to add the 205 Main appraisal I received on July 6, 2018 from the law director into the minutes of this meeting. I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion passes.
Next item, I would like to bring this up to be fair to EMS. We did have discussions about the 2018, 2019. It says business plan. It says no action was taken. But Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that that document be entered into the minutes of this meeting. I so move.
Second.
Have motion second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next item, Mayor Frank, was a motion made by Commissioner Scott, seconded by Commissioner McCamey, for the law director to prepare a lease for the Tupper Town building to forward to full commission for approval. We have that in front of us. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have motion second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Next
Any
item.
opposed, motion passes.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Next item was upon motion made by Commissioner Alderson, seconded by Commissioner McCamey, to allow the mayor to pursue a grant fund and to fund an emergency operations center joint project with the city of Clinton. I so move.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion passes.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, upon motion made by Commissioner McCamey, seconded by Commissioner Meade, to forward resolution number 18-07-700 designating Little Ponderosa Zoo as a nature center, rehabilitation center, animal educational exhibit center, and the official zoo of Anderson County to full commission for approval subject to modifications by the law director. I so move.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Well, hold on,
Aye.
hold on.
Oops,
Commissioner
sorry.
Meade?
Yeah, I just want to say, Mr. Yeager, this is now, has all the final wording. Right, the one that you just handed out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, there were some minor things. There was a date, a couple of things, and there was some checking he was doing to check with the conservation folks to make sure that this was exactly what was needed. So we need to go ahead with this. Thanks.
Does everybody realize what this is going to do? And let me make this clear so everybody at home knows. Currently, and I appreciate your corresponding with TWRA on this, we've got a need in this region. We do not have a facility for TWRA to take injured or orphaned wildlife for treatment and rehabilitation purposes. They had to take them to far upper East Tennessee or back down towards
Just take them in North Carolina.
Nashville.
Whitetail deer.
Mr. Cox has agreed to be one of these centers. In order for him to hold all classes of animals, and I've got them defined there in the exhibits, 1 through 5, he has to be a municipal zoo. And what this resolution does is establish that so he can have a rehabilitation, a treatment center, an educational facility for our public to see what's going on. And he'll be able to take in injured wildlife or orphaned wildlife until they can be set free at a later time. Any questions on what he's doing here? Thank you.
Yeah, I have one.
Yes, sir.
What is our liability?
We have no liability other than the fact that we have to provide him some type of contribution. And what Commissioner Val has been able to do at the recommendation of Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Val's met with him. We're gonna allow our prisoner work group, and those, thank goodness we had the workhouse in place that you approved a few years back. They can go out there and do public projects for Mr. Cox. And that'll be our contribution. He stood up in the meeting, he said he wants no financial assistance, none whatsoever. So they'll go out there and help him with picking up the trash, trimming, mowing the grass, whatever is approved by the jail administrator and the sheriff. But that will be our contribution. He's asking for no money from us.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Upon a motion made by Commissioner McCamey, seconded by Commissioner Isabel, to allow the mayor to pursue a multimodal access grant for sidewalk/crosswalk at 25W at the Health Department. Motion carries, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, under discussion, it was brought to our attention, we had some discussion on the Glen Alpine Convenience Center. We had a status update. There was no action taken. Just wanted to bring that up. Old business, there was a discussion for the grant for the all-inclusive playground discussed. There was no action taken, but I believe that's in process. Is that right? Does anybody know?
That's on me, and I've got those applications.
Very good. Thank you. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Any other old business to come before this committee? Commissioner McCamey? Well, let's do that under new business. Okay. Very now, let's move on to new business. Commissioner McCamey?
For some of you older folks here and some of the older commissioners, Frank Sewell, who was a longtime county employee, passed Friday the 13th. And I just wanted to make that announcement tonight that, Frank worked many, many years here with our solid waste department and in the codes enforcement. But he was well thought of and done an excellent job as a county employee. And I'd just like for us all to remember him and the family in prayers. So,
Thank you. Any other new business? Commissioner White?
I don't want to get into any kind of
discussion with anyone about this, but everybody knows my lack of I don't know what word I want to use, but I have never had a lot of confidence in the EMS department, in the leadership, in the management. But we had somewhat of a plan in our budget meeting from Nathan, and I think this, the audit we had, the plan that he's trying to put together, the $800,000, I think this will be a chance for the EMS director and me as a commissioner, and maybe us as a commission, to maybe get going in the right direction. I'm anxious to see how he spends this money. I'm anxious to see the results that we get, and I'm encouraged that maybe we can gain a new respect for the direction that the ambulance service is going. That's all I wanted to say, but I'm glad that this entire commission had this discussion tonight instead of our budget committee recommending. We didn't vote on it because we wanted it to come to everybody to have a say in it. But I think this is a great opportunity for each one of us to watch and see how this goes down, and maybe we can get a new appreciation for the director. Thank you.
Commissioner Creasy.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Robert and thank him for bringing that up to date about Mr. Sewell. He was very close with me. I met him some 40 years ago when I'd done the radio work for you and for the highway department, and he was the county engineer, if I remember, at that time, early 70s. Had a lot of respect for him over the years, and he was a great guy, and I think the world of him. And thank you for bringing that up and letting the public know about Frank. Thank you very much.
And on one last word on that, I done pest control for Frank for a long time, and he always bragged and talked good about his work here at the courthouse. And he said he watched us when we was on TV, and Frank was a good guy.
Great guy.
Hold on a second. Natalie.
I wanted to make this comment at the end of the budget discussion, but the tone wasn't correct. But I'm going to try to make it now. I want to say thank you to Commission and Mayor Frank for the generous contribution. I also want to thank Jay Aker for honoring this initiative as part of his wife's memorial. The support from the community, individuals, businesses, and nonprofits has been absolutely overwhelming. The first universal playground in Anderson County is being built with a spirit of love and support, which is a wonderful honor to the vision of bringing people of all abilities together to play, learn, and laugh. I thank you on behalf of David and Christina and everybody that has a vested interest in our county having a universal playground. I want to thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, I just want to say thank you to everyone here, to all the commissioners. I know what you go through. I know that you really put a lot of time and service into serving your communities and your constituents. And I respect each and every one of you, and good luck. Thank you.
So I'll go to the fire.